Hello, Laura and Swati. We are so excited to have you on the podcast today and talking about one of our favorite topics to talk about under the lens of Vedic astrology, and that is acknowledging that each of us shares the commonality of having our moon in Scorpio. So I'd love to start this conversation just by asking, what does the moon in Scorpio energy read as?
Do you want to start, Lara?
I'm not sure I understand the question. What do you mean? What does it read as?
And I just meant it as how would you define moon in Scorpio?
Oh, fabulous, gorgeous, radiant, sensitive, deep, magnetic. You know what I always think of is like in the impress. If you impress on it, it might hold that shape for a little while.
Mm.
So like, yeah, it's water and it's fire. It's intuitive, and I think of Moon and Scorpio people as great healers. I think that Moon and Scorpio is misunderstood.
Mm.
I think there's a sense in the West of the Scorpio as sort of cloak and dagger and shadow and dangerous. And I think of Moon and Scorpio as quite sensitive, tender, mediating and remediating emotional energy for the world and on behalf of humanity. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to spend time with. Yeah, they need time themselves to do that processing. I think we're born with Moon and Scorpio because our souls meant to be some kind of a healer for this world. Even if it isn't active hands-on healing, there's something brave about becoming alive with Moon and Scorpio. Yeah.
Oh, it's really nice to hear your definition, Lara. I appreciate that. I can totally relate. And I think the sensitivity piece has to be emphasized. And of course, in our world, sensitivity is so misunderstood. And the gifts of being sensitive are challenging in our world, but are so powerful, actually. But it takes a long time, in my experience, to really move into right relationship with the emotional sensitivity and the power of that. And I can't claim to have it all figured out. In fact, I'm still discovering and peeling back layers of that. But that inner nature, the inner world is so rich and so deep. And I find personally that that's where a lot of my misalignment with the world and relationships comes from. It feels often like being misunderstood, that the depth and the realms that are normal, our normal orientation, can't really be met fully or understood by others. And that can bring a lot of challenges. I tend to attract Scorpio moon clients. So there's something about us that is really about deepening our own self-love and acceptance in radical ways, so that we don't have to feel like there's something wrong with us. And I think that's a big one. We are different. We are absolutely different. And that can feel very intense with the emotional sensitivity. So we have to be really wise in our body wisdom and our grief work and navigating the big waves skillfully.
Yeah, I shared what my teacher had shared with me about learning about Moon and Scorpio, because there is that stereotype of Scorpio just being in the dark and in the shadows and liking the things that are unseen and the unknown, and not really having the depth of understanding that Scorpio is one of the deepest signs, and that he described to me most people can paint with like 4 to 6 colors, but Moon and Scorpio can paint with like 26. And that really helped me to understand, like, yeah, I feel things so deeply and so intensely. And if I'm in relation with someone, it's just passion. And if I go into a new line of work or choose a new career, it's full passion and I'm in it so much. It's just that like deep feeling, and being heard and seen in that was just such a revelation to me. And I think it is just being seen on that level, because like you mentioned before, Swati, it's like it's hard to find people who can understand you in that depth. And it is cool that you can attract clients, you can attract people in your life that have Moon in Scorpio. I have a lot of family members actually that are Moon in Scorpio, and I can see how we connect on that other plane and level. So what do you think? And I also think that women and those who identify with women having Moon in Scorpio can almost relate to it just a little bit differently.
Mm.
What is that commonality between women who share Moon in Scorpio?
I think, well, one of the themes I've noticed with myself and clients is there tends to be a loneliness theme or a feeling of isolation. And it could be our differences, our uniqueness. It could be that we just orient completely differently to the world. I know for me, I've had to really be careful about absorbing other other people's energies or emotions from other people, because there's such a porous nature to the Scorpio moon. And so, I know Scorpio gets a bad rap, and certainly debilitated moon gets a bad rap, but it's all the more reason why we really have to be on top of the moon nature, the moon wisdom, the waxing, the waning, the cycles, the rhythms, and the imbalances around that are going to be felt even more extremely by a Scorpio moon who identifies as female.
Mm.
And I kind of want to add to that, Swati, because I feel like very much in my experience with Moon and Scorpio, I would never really describe myself as someone who's super emotional. But when you were talking about that porous nature, I am someone who I feel like can pick up, and I'm sure you, all three of you are as well, going into a room and being able to like very quickly read the emotions of other people and almost like chameleon myself to those energies and to other people's emotions. So I feel like, could that be a piece of it as well, where maybe I'm not outwardly emotional, but there's a lot riding underneath the surface where I experience things deeply, even if it's coming from other people.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of our gifts. And we need to, I think there is a tendency for various clairvoyant gifts with the debilitated moon. I would also describe myself as not very emotional, to be honest, but that is not the reflection I get from my partner. In fact, we had a challenging conversation about it last night, and it's kind of amazing to me that that's how people see me, that I have these waves, because to me, it's so normal. So I think it's interesting for many of us, we just think we're normal, that this is normal, that we feel, and that's normal. But in our world, feeling deeply is actually strange. It's odd. It's not understood. It's not honored. It's not even valued. So we may think we're fine, this is normal just to feel what we feel, but going into a room and sensing things, feeling things, picking up on others' emotions, that's a very unique orientation, actually.
Mhm. Can you imagine if all parents were given classes on how to raise a Moon in Scorpio child?
It would be helpful.
Because so often it was, go to your room.
Mm.
Hide this from others. I always felt a little different growing up, and probably it was that, feeling things in a world that didn't seem to be noticing the feelings that were going on around. I think this is an interesting question, just to go back to the question on what you notice in terms of friendship with your Scorpio moon people. And I'd just like to really acknowledge Swati is that even though we have actually never met in person, when there is excitement in the field, every now and then she'll just check in. Little Instagram DM, how are you doing? And I feel like there's a sort of riding the waves almost in tandem sometimes. So we don't speak about it. We don't share necessarily maybe what we're experiencing, but there's a sense that we're riding almost the same wave. And I hope that you feel this, Swati, because I just feel so much respect and admiration for you. And I just feel like I'm here, I'm waving to you, we're on the wave, we're going to be good. There is this, for an awakened or an awakening or somebody who's working on themselves or seeking to be alive to it, there's a tender gaze that makes you just feel I'm not alone. And I think Swati made a good point. Until there's some awakening and some friendship around that, you feel very alone, I think, as a Scorpio moon in the depths of your feelings. And I too, in my relationships, have had people say, oh, just get over it, or you're too sensitive, or whatever. And so you just learn how to do your own processing, which is, of course, important for all of us to do. So it's beautiful to then have the friendship like we're doing right now, where even if I know I'm going to be alone when it's time for me to process my feelings, I need to do that. I need my alone time. I need to be in nature. I need lots of rest. That's how I process. But it's so sweet to know that there's someone over there. There's Swati. I might see her on Instagram, or you guys at Soulful Veda. And it's just that little wave. It's just that little nod. And it's just enough to not feel alone, to feel that we are part of something. We're all going through it. And I feel we're needed. I mean, I really do feel this is, as you said earlier, Swati, this is a gift. Even we could have a conversation about what does the word debilitated mean. I always like to think that once upon a time, Jyotish was done for the royal family. The kings and queens and barons and baronesses didn't want their child to grow up and be a healer. They wanted them to grow up and be a prince or a princess and have everything at their fingertips. And I think nowadays we live in a world where the world most needs healing. It most needs this remediation. We're like Mother Earth herself. We're willing to take the waste and turn it into a field of bounty and beauty. That's a work that we're here doing. And I think that's a gift not only in our own lives, but I think that's a gift to humanity. I hope that doesn't sound braggy. I just feel like I think we need a different way of looking at it.
I think we should brag, Laura. We've earned some bragging. This is hard. I'll brag. Yeah, I think we're special.
I love that, because I agree with everything in Vedic astrology. It's where is the opportunity? And I love that switch and understanding where it came from and where that mindset would have been, and taking the Vedic knowledge, which is dynamic by nature, and what does it mean in the context that's relative to today's world is so important, and something that I'm always questioning and reflecting on. So thank you for that. And yeah, I love that you brought up when you were younger, you had to turn off and hide your emotions. I feel like that was very much my experience. If I ever cried or, out in public, it was very much, that's not appropriate to do now, and turn off your feelings. And I think I flexed that muscle to turn off my feelings and emotions, which I think is interesting to think about. I question this of, I would also consider myself not emotional per se, but as I'm growing and evolving, is that just because I was taught and conditioned to turn off my emotions to not totally let them flow and to follow in those? So I'm kind of dancing between those two right now and kind of seeing what was conditioned when I was younger. But I'd love to hear from anyone if they had any type of experience or they notice that conditioning to turn off their feelings or emotions.
Oh, I think that's symptomatic of a debilitated moon. So when I'm looking at a chart and I see a debilitated moon, I know right away that that soul did not feel that the mother was showing up, that the nurturing, the emotional availability was absolutely not there. Now, there could be a lot of different reasons for that. It could be, I mean, there are all kinds of reasons for that. It could be health. It could be, you know, the mother ended up in the hospital and so wasn't available, or whatever reason, the emotional availability wasn't there. And that's how the individual experienced the mother. So that's something we have to just name and honor, that what is your experience with nourishment? Because that's what the moon is. And that's also our emotional body. That's how we can even feel what is nourishing. That's why I love the emotional body. It's our animal body. It's our animal knowing, our animal sense. And Scorpio moons have a deep animal body sense of being. Because of my relationship with being unheard and unseen in my family systems, and I would even say in our societal systems of harm, I went the route of body-centered expressive art therapy. It was a way for me to start to understand and unpack this rage around feeling silenced and unheard, unseen. And it's through the arts that and grief work that I was able to start finding more harmony and right relationship with my emotional body and the creativity of that. Because it's also, there's a deep creativity within this realm of Scorpio moon. We have to learn to bring it out into the world, though, because it's so inner and it's so deep. So that's, I would say that's indicative of a debilitated moon, that we have issues around expressing emotion, and we have to find appropriate, helpful, even healthy ways to express emotion in ways that do not harm ourselves or others. And that's learned behavior, by the way. So look to your mother and your mother's lineage, because if you have a debilitated moon, it's not just about you. It's about your mother and her whole lineage, and this not being in right relationship with the emotional body on some level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, welcome to today. Welcome to our world.
Welcome to our world.
Feminine and emotions have been silenced and buried for so long. I mean, think about it. They used to put women in hospitals if they were too emotional. Excuse me for burying myself. Yeah. Well, Swati, I love your attention to it, and the way in which you really do live what you speak of, and you're so responsive to people as they go through. I mean, I do really see how Moon and Scorpio is such a gift through you, because you're so attentive to other people as they're going through their processes.
You're so kind, Laura, and this is why I just cherish you. And it must be the Anuradha. And I'm sure everyone else feels it too, but it's like you're just a balm for the heart. And every time you show up, and your voice and the way you leave me these sweet little messages, and it's always the right thing at the right time. And that's how I know you're kindred. So you're just so kind. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I would say I see the same in you.
Thank you. I do mean it. You're very attentive to others, and I think you really become a beautiful, safe place for people to feel their feelings. And, you know, I think that, again, Scorpio has a lot to do with transformation. So this piece of not feeling really held and loved and nurtured and nourished by a mother figure in our early life, you know, potentially the gift there is also to transform that. And, you know, we know a lot of people with Moon and Scorpio, famous people who are very powerful people. So there's a power there too. There's a power to learn from what we've experienced and then perhaps offer that as a gift. There's the power and the potential of moksha in eighth sign, eighth house. So, there's a lot of good that is here, but I think, Swati, I think what you model for us is the willingness and the courage to walk through the fire of the moon in Scorpio.
Yeah. And I think for many of us, that misunderstood piece, because, and what I like to remind people is your chart is just what you experienced. You might have a sibling or another family member, and they're like, what are you talking about? Everything was great.
Yeah.
But the chart is a reflection of how you experience life, the world, your early childhood. So we have to take that into consideration, that the deep feeling is there, and it might be a very different experience than someone else. But ultimately, I think of us as, many of us are grief workers, or as you say, healers, Laura. We're here to transform our own depths and our own darkness and transform it into light. And of course, if you have Anuradha in your chart, that is a big part of it, is triumph over the darkness and finding the meaning and the celebration on the other side of all the grief work and the heavy lifting, and benefiting from your labor, your efforts in that process. And that's a really immense gift for our world, which is so averse to emotion and grief work. There are just very few skills, let alone awareness, in this colonized existence that we live in. Indigenous cultures are very wise with grief and emotion and creativity and self-expression, nature and tending to body and the wisdom of the body. But, most of us are hundreds and hundreds of years of disconnection, epigenetically, just disconnected from our body wisdom, our emotion, our wisdom within grief and transformation of grief into life force. And I think the Scorpio moon has to learn that for herself and discover the ways in which she can rise from the ashes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not become the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said. I think just to add to all that you said, which is so beautiful, just to again come back to what Angelic was asking, is I think for young women, if I think back to my younger years when I was living in London and working in a mainstream job, I was working this Discovery Channel, bringing Discovery Channel to Europe, so very much in that field. And I think for me it was just recognizing what my needs are,
Mm-hmm.
and moving into work and moving into relationships and moving into a place where I'm more in nature, where I'm surrounded by people who are honest and authentic and doing their work and taking responsibility for their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And doing work where, we can be present to others, where we don't have to be fake or inauthentic or, feed that capitalist or colonial system. I think that's really important for young women to, Angelica, as you're speaking, to start that process of recognizing not just what am I hiding my feelings? Is that conditioning? Is that my real self? Am I willing to feel my feelings? But also, what are the relationships? What are the experiences of my life? And are they supporting me? Are they nourishing me? Are they allowing my authentic being? Do I have time if I suddenly get really bad news? Can I step away for 20 minutes and feel those feelings and be with that? Or do I have to be like plowing through and, manning up sort of thing? So it's, so many young women, I find it so interesting because there's so much awakening, right? There's so many young women who are doing amazing work like you guys in Ayurveda, in Jyotish, and finding these things at a young age. And Swati grew up in it. But there's so many too that are kind of in their 20s and 30s thinking that conditioned life is what they've got to do. And they're having the struggles, you can feel them sort of in their chrysalis starting to make space for themselves. And so just to say, you have permission to feel your feelings and to find a life relationships, work, etc., that supports you in your authentic being. I love Jyotish about that because it really helps you own who you are and what you're experiencing in this life.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you permission to fully live your unique individual life. It takes Ayurveda, I think, to the next level.
Mm.
You know, it says this soul came here for this life. Now go out and live it. And we don't have to live the life that puts us in a box
Mm-hmm.
and prevents us from really, you know, feeling our feelings. I'll just say it like that. But to really, because to feel our feelings is to be alive.
Mm.
Right? And Scorpio moon have a lot of emotional intelligence, but it comes from being present to what we're feeling.
Mm. It's beautiful. Mm.
Yeah. And I kind of want to talk about the energy of transformation too, because I think as we awake to the emotional intelligence, we start to figure out, like you were saying, Laura, we want to burst out of our chrysalis, become the butterflies, but there's a lot of growth and change that happens. And that's something that can really burden relationships, or I guess not the right relationships, because if you're constantly evolving and changing, you feel like you can no longer relate to some people on certain levels. So I'm really interested in both of your experiences in how to gracefully find transformation in your life and find the right people as you go through each level and let go.
Go ahead, Laura.
I'm just laughing. I'm like, who said it had to be graceful?
I'm hoping it's graceful. Let there be an answer.
I don't know. I mean, I always look to nature. When nature gives us a hurricane, or she gives us a volcano, or she gives us something, are we going to call that graceful? Yeah, I mean, it's nature. It's nature's way. I think that with Moon and Scorpio, we're going to have times in our life where it's more volcanic than we might like it to be. But to try to manage it all is, I feel, not honest to your process. And I think, you know, this goes back to the beginning, something Swati said, we need to start with a lot of self-compassion for ourselves. We need to begin there. We need self-compassion. We need self-forgiveness. I think every day we should start with, okay, I'm going to give myself a hug right now. And all through the day, I'm here to give myself a hug. When Swati talked about body-centered expressive therapies, I was thinking, yeah, what was my way of really coming home to myself? And I remember about 20 years ago, going through a really difficult period. And I would close my eyes at night and I would just imagine, it makes me a little emotional to remember it, but I would just imagine the most beautiful Devi, like an angel who was like a divine mother. And it was just, the form of it was just whatever worked for my imagination. But I just imagined that she was holding me, and I would lie in bed and I would go to sleep and she would just hold me. It was like the holding and the rocking that I didn't get as a child. And I was like, I can have it now. You know, I can bring that into my life now. I can be my own best mother. I can be my own best friend. And I can allow myself to feel my feelings while I'm also holding myself in love.
Mm.
And then if I lose a friend, if I lose a relationship, if I lose those things, it's going to hurt, but I'm going to hold myself through it. I'm going to be there for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite powerful. And then maybe that helps you be a person who can be there for others as well.
Mm.
You know, I think when we're fully present to ourselves and others, we are like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. Like, I feel like until we're at that level, like sometimes things are so intense and hard. And over and over and over again, I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Deep breath, be here, be present to this. Like, that's the level at which I think that Scorpio moon person can show up for other people. Totally on the edge of what's familiar, what's known, what's comfortable. But we start by doing that first with us, with ourselves.
So profound.
Hopefully it's graceful in the end. We'll see.
I use the word gentle. That's my word for graceful. May it be gentle. I think self-love and acceptance is non-negotiable. And that ultimately regardless of the fluxes and the changes in our environment, our circumstances, life, relationships, money, the outer, that being able to come back to a place of deep love and acceptance for our messiness, our imperfections, because that's a big part of being a Scorpio is our challenges around our imperfections. And the self-love and acceptance piece has honestly been one of the biggest life-changing pieces for me. And I literally tap every day in the woods on, I'm open to the possibility of loving and accepting myself a little bit more today, and kind of going through the cleanup of this feeling and that feeling, and where something sticky feels or messy, and just working my way into, maybe I can be gentler with myself, because that influences all our relationships, whether it's my clients or my boyfriend or my animals or friends. At the end of the day, we're all just doing the best we can. And it may not look like it sometimes, and it may be really messy and griefy, but that's the realm that the Scorpio moon knows. And that's our orientation. And so I feel like that's where we can bring compassion to those places that are uncomfortable or misunderstood or rejected by most of society, or places that others are even rejecting in themselves. We know those realms. It's almost boring by now. I mean, honestly, sometimes I'm so bored with it. It's like, oh, another grief wave. All right, here we go. And not everyone has that grace, if you will, to ride the waves gently. And I think with time and experience and self-compassion, we're able to do that. And so we can offer that to others. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Your grief is normal. Feel what you feel. Love and accept yourself regardless. And we change really fast. So I always try to remind people who are close to me, I'm not the same person I was yesterday. I change literally every 24 hours. I feel like a new person. So just try to bear with me here, that like, I may look like I'm the same person, but I don't feel the same. I've just been through major inner upheavals, come back to center, and found a new way forward with some creative idea. So that was my 24 hours. What was yours?
I think that, oh, go ahead, Laura.
Just to actually affirm that there's tremendous creativity that can come through it.
I find a lot of hope from both of your experiences, that there can be consistency in acknowledging the change, because I'm still on the point where these emotional waves come through, and I feel like my whole inner relationships and world can kind of change in these kind of dramatic events. And for some reason, these dramatic events, I feel like I'm always putting on a show. Like, everyone is watching these things that are happening. And it's great, because I feel like it allows me to be super honest and confront everything up to the surface, and there's no room to hide, which that would have been my normal reaction, is to hide everything. But it's all on display. And knowing that these waves, I think once you go through something like that, that's dramatic, you think, I did it, I'm over it, and that's going to be grace now. But really, it's acknowledging the only consistency is that self acceptance and love piece, and that is what allows us to ride the waves with the ease that we mainly crave.
It's so important to realize that we're not going to, at the ocean, there isn't just one wave. Okay, I read that wave, I'm done now. No, wave after wave after wave. So we got to learn to surf. Knees bent, deep breaths, ride the waves. Yeah.
And I remember a very important piece of wisdom that one of my somatic therapists gave me after my mom died. And I was just, engulfed with all the grief that was undigested, ancestral, my own, all of it. And that's when I learned actually how to surf my waves. And she reminded me to come back to shore and find my way back to shore. So it's not just the endless waves, it's also the remembering that we can bring ourselves back to shore, that we know how to get back to shore. That's our resilience. And I think that a skillful Scorpio moon has that ability to ride immense waves, be an amazing surfer, and trust themselves implicitly. I know how to get myself back to shore. I even thrive on this cycle of surfing and shore and surfing and shore. So we have immense power in that, meaning that we're not going to be, we're not going to drown if we know how to honor the power of the water within. And I think those are skills, like Laura was saying. Why aren't parents taught these things? But even why aren't children? Especially if you have a Scorpio moon or you have a child with a Scorpio moon, it's going to be really important to have emotional intelligence and skill around naming emotion, expressing emotion, feeling emotion in the body, and supporting the intelligence around that. It will prevent a lot of the suffering that probably most of us have had to go through in order to find our center and find our way. A lot of this could be prevented.
Yeah.
In my take anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And both of you mentioned specific rituals you had around self-love and self-compassion, but do you have any specific, maybe celestial rituals that you use to support your Scorpio moon, or even just to acknowledge when a wave is coming? And you said make your way back to shore, but like, what does that look like in real life? Does that look like journaling? Does it look like, creative work? Like, what are some of the tangible practices that you use?
So the celestial ritual is checking nakshatras daily, because that is my orientation with moon, and just, oh, no wonder, Shravana, or a Rudra day. Okay, I'm going to probably take some extra precautions just to keep myself tended to, and know that there might be things coming at me that feel aggressive. So that's step number one for me. And then, as Laura said, nature. I have to be in nature. I even live on the edge of national forest. I need to be even closer than I am right now. Animals, horses, dogs, cats, plants, all of the Ayurvedic protocols that all of us know, non-negotiable, because we have such a sensitive physiology. We can't eat crap, we can't mismanage the tending. And then it's expression, finding all of the ways to express authentically in healthy ways through art, music, dance, screaming, yelling, singing, crying, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't get bottled up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and I'll add one more thing, Laura, before you share your list. Sea salt baths every night, a sea salt bath. Anyone who knows me is like, she's going to take her bath. I have to have the water and the sea salt.
Well, there's a couple of things here too, in that you have moon in the rising sign, and Angelica and I have an aspect in the rising sign. So there's also that added layer of porousness.
Yeah.
So the very first time I ever had a Jyotish reading, I was given the Gayatri mantra to protect, to help with that porousness, just to wrap, the idea of wrapping yourself in light, so nothing dark. I mean, if we are going to be picking up on people's emotions, let's put up some sort of a border, a light boundary, so that negativity and darkness can't cross it. And so, Gayatri mantra is a back pocket mantra for me. It starts the day, but it's also like whenever I'm just feeling I need it, I just pull it out of the back pocket. I'm saying it as I'm watering the plants. It's just a mantra that goes with me wherever I go. I wrote a book called Ayurveda Cooking for Beginners. Somebody recently asked me, "Oh, Laura, do you like cooking?" And I was like, I wrote a book about it, but I'm not even really sure I can say I have a passion for cooking. Why is it that I cook and teach Ayurvedic cooking and nutrition, etc.? And it's come to me after a lot of thinking about that, is that it's not like passion. It's not like I would say I love cooking. It's not like I want to cook every day all the time. Cooking is also a way for me of grounding and nourishing myself. And so I feel like it's more like what people get from meditation. A lot of people might say, I don't love it, but it helps me. I need to do it on a daily basis. Cooking is really that for me. It's very, very much about nourishing the senses, the body, the mind, creative inputs, etc. So it's calming and soothing more than exciting and passionate, right? So that's just another one. And thinking about it, and then finally writing. I mean, writing is, oftentimes I will sit down or I'll tell myself I've got to do this thing, and I don't know how to do it, and I don't know, I'm just sure that I won't be able to do it, and I have nothing more to say, and what about the other people have already said something? And then, just have to do it, and I sit down and do it, and you show up for it, and something comes through. So writing is a beautiful place for me to face my fears and my own four walls, let's say, and come through the other side with something that feels meaningful to me, at least. And also, it's a way for me to connect back to the world. It's a way to kind of be a channel for something that feels like a connecting to the all. And those are just some things. And chanting is a big way for me to remediate energy. But sometimes it's just laying down on my bed in an afternoon and just saying, okay, I'm just going to go lie down and be with this. Be with this grief, be with this loss, be with this sadness. I mean, sometimes you're just not going to move it. You're just going to be with it. Sometimes we're not going to transform it. We're just going to acknowledge it.
Oh, thank you. That is actually something I'm really holding right now. In terms of transformation, what if we can take the doing out of it and just let it be and find its way? It will find its way. Everything finds its way. Maybe we don't have to do anything. That's it's just a question I'm holding, being such a doer and a let's change this and we must transform this. And what if it's transforming anyway? I mean, look at nature. Spring comes, and then summer, and then fall, and then winter. And she just always does this. So the wave will find the shore. I guess it's more showing up for it.
That feels true for me too. And I think from my perspective, it's sometimes I go searching for the shadows and I get stuck in the mud just trying to change everything, and almost that perfectionist tendency of I got to clean this mess, and then everything will be aligned and okay. So that feels truthful for me, and just allowing nature to reveal itself when it needs to.
I think it's helpful for our relationships, to be honest. One of the challenges for the Scorpio moon in relationships is expecting others to show up like we do, and they don't, and they won't, and they can't. And so what if we do our tending and we trust that the other and the relationship is going to find its way through this as well in their own way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's well said. That's true. I mean, someone once said, yeah, a great teacher once said to me something like, you need to have a very strong relationship with the divine.
Mm.
He gave me a Radha mantra for that, because he said, no human will ever sort of meet that kind of love
Mm.
that you hold and offer and desire.
Mm. Hmm.
And that's a good point, not to have. I think that we want to. I think with the debilitated moon, we want to have a sense of our own value. I think we need that, and therefore, in relationship, to seek relationships that mirror that value.
Mm. Mm.
Don't put up with anything less, right? But at the same time, to manage our own expectations for what other people will be able, how others will match us. I love that saying that, another being can only meet you at the level at which they've met themselves. And a lot of Scorpio moon people have met themselves at a very deep level. And we might not find that readily in the world. But maybe speak also a little bit to the loneliness you mentioned earlier, Swati.
I think that's very accurate. That in my experience is where a lot of the loneliness and longing comes from. Is it's so rare to be met in the places we normally meet ourselves. I mean, this is our normal orientation, the depths. And it's such a rare soul who is doing that or is able to do that. And I think that's why the Scorpio moons kind of flock together. I know quite a few actually at this point in time, and we find each other. We almost seek each other out like branches reaching towards each other. And kindred will find each other. And we need the reminders that there's nothing wrong with us. Maybe there's something wrong with the world. So let's come back to our self-love. And I think Laura brings up a really good point about purity. We don't want to bypass and we don't want to be overly puritanical, but there is something important about having a pure environment and pure hearts around us, and people who are in environments that I'll just say aren't gross. I don't do well with that. I like a clean, a tidy way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we are. If there is that porousness or that impressionability, then we need to be surrounded by very sattvic people, things, places. I think that's an important part of sort of almost a daily practice for us. Eating well, as you said, and all of that.
We haven't talked about this, but this is one thing a Jyotish said to me once, and I've seen it to be true. But addiction is actually it can be a big part of the Scorpio nature, especially a Scorpio moon, again, without the skillfulness. So that's something we do need to be on top of. And I remember him saying to me, just get addicted to things that are good for you. And, again, I could probably do a whole nother podcast on that, but I think the essence of that is a good reminder that, tend to the cooking, like you said, Laura, or your movement practice or something, but redirect the energy that might be going into something that's addictive into something that's at least nourishing, then we can find more balance. But there is a tendency to be addicted or have an addictive personality, avoidant attachment style, and big emotion. So, this combination, it's challenging, but it's also very special. And we have to remind ourselves and each other how special we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just like to add, or there's a tendency to be in relationships with people who have addictions.
Certainly, if that's in your seventh house, right?
Oh.
Yeah. If it's in your first house, that's looking at you. Yeah. Either way, it can go either way.
Thank
Really
you.
good conversation.
Yeah, and thank you for that last piece. I actually wanted to bring that up in the conversation too, because when I was talking about being younger and avoiding those feelings, it's so easy to numb or whatever you can with the addiction to push down the feelings. And then I feel like for me, I went through a phase like that when I was younger. And then when I removed that, it was like, you just felt everything so deeply, and it like came rushing in, and processing that it was heavy at that time when I allowed that to come through. And when you also talk about the piece of putting that addictive energy into something else, that's really what I felt, because I was then slowing down the process and thinking, okay, why do I want this? What is that feeling? And it actually, Moon and Scorpio energy really defined it a lot. Like, I like the feeling of going into the unknown, of like anything is possible type of energy. And then also this, like, I just would be like passionate and alive. And I was like, if I had that towards what I was really passionate about and what brought something to life and where I really could be creative in my own life, what could happen? What could flourish if I was just so aligned? And that really helped me a lot through that process. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think Scorpio Moon people can be so powerful, right? Thinking of someone like Oprah Winfrey, Quincy Jones, one of the directors is Steven Spielberg. I mean, think once you figure out what is it that I'm going to do, the water holds and the fire gives the passion, the clarity, the goal setting, and the water part of it is just steady and continuous and keeps going. So yeah, there's potential there.
I think we need hope too. I don't know about any of you, but the reminders that I got as a child were often negative from Jyotishis, filled with kind of dire effects, and didn't leave me very hopeful about myself or my chart or my life. And I think that's one of the reasons I have the group that I have, and I do Dharma mentorship, and I, support people on this level of, let's make sure that we remember the good things, that we are really focusing on the parts of this experience, or the ways that we are that are absolutely amazing and incredible, and the gifts around it, and not getting lost in the darkness of it, which in my experience it's been pretty hopeless. If I kept listening to what I was getting from the Jyotishis, that world-class Jyotishis, mind you, that it would have continued to be a very depressing path. So I think we really need to remember that there are so many gifts in debilitation. In fact, many, many gifts. Maybe that's our next podcast. Yeah. I actually just shared something about that. Debilitated planets are amazing. They're incredible. We just have to know how to use them. And at the same time, it's very different than our world. Our world loves an exalted planet. But that's not even necessarily healthy. or balanced. So a debilitated planet can give us so many opportunities that an exalted planet could only dream of. And we have to remember that there are many, many gifts in turning inward and coming within and tending to our inner realms.
Yeah, we are the witches they burned at the stake. And there was a reason they were afraid of our power.
100%.
But we're back, and we're here now to raise that deep power back. And it is, it is the power of what we're doing here, this power of gathering, listening, holding, nurturing. It's beautiful, because I think Moon and Scorpio people do want to give what they didn't get themselves.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we don't forget ourselves in that, and it doesn't become another, I think you mentioned it, Angelica, kind of addictive relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I love what you were saying, Swati, because I think we do want to be careful with who we listen to. Even the greatest Jyotishis can be dissing, can be diminishing in how they describe some of the Jyotish sort of scripture. And I think to see any debilitation as weakness is somewhat missing the point. It's a superficial and shallow approach. The question is, why? Why did your soul choose to come alive with this matrix of light and energy? What is it that you're here to learn? And how is this something that you're going to use for your own growth and evolution?
Mm-hmm.
And a debilitated moon is a really great tool for growth and evolution. Bring it on. We're like, here, okay, bring it on. Right? This is like rapid growth life. Anybody who's chosen a moon in Scorpio, you've chosen rapid, or not rapid, but let's say this is a life of evolution. We're here for it.
Yes. And I would say that this is the most misunderstood placement that I've encountered from a Jyotish perspective. Of all the misinterpretations and misunderstandings, I have never actually met, outside of Laura, a Jyotishi who truly understands the power, the magnificence, the nature of a Scorpio moon. And I actually look for that. Like, I kind of base my my trust or my understanding of you in just from a Jyotish perspective, like, can you honor this as a gift rather than a curse? And it's rare. It's quite rare, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It would take one to know one, I think.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, in my opinion, that it's missed, because to think about so many great people in history who have had so many challenges and how their strength has come from overcoming those things and seeing them as a gift, right? And so we can apply that real life experience to, anything, whether it's a chart or a challenge in our lives or whatever we're going through. And I want to go back to the thing you said about hope, Swati, and end this podcast on what I think is a good note. I'm a beginner in Jyotish, but I think 2022 is sounding hopeful. So if you have any hopeful insights for us, this, will air in January. It'll be a new year, fresh energy. And I know a lot of us were hoping for that this year in 2021. And for me personally, I wasn't feeling it. So maybe 2022 is the year.
Boy, let's hope so. Yeah, 2021 was not the year I'd hoped for. And that is something I'm still digesting. To be really honest, we're coming off the eclipse cycle as we're doing this podcast, and I'm still trying to find my ground after this big upheaval of shadow and grief. As I look at the transits ahead, though, there are going to be massive changes, and we were talking about this a bit before our recording started, but April brings 4 major transits back to back. And just one major transit requires a reorientation and time to integrate the shift. And in 1 month, we're going to see 4 of the slowest moving planets change signs. So we're looking at major changes physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and in all areas of life. And I think that can go a number of ways. I know Laura and I have briefly touched on this, but one of the things that does feel helpful is the Jupiter going into its own sign of Pisces, which is really going to bring some harmony to an otherwise disharmonious world right now. And so that's giving me hope. And I'll certainly stay positive on that note for now.
Yeah.
What about you, Laura? Anything that you are seeing or that we need to know about?
Well, the same as you. I've been looking forward to Jupiter leaving Capricorn. So Jupiter is now in Aquarius. I always think of Jupiter going to Aquarius as a bit like somebody coming out of jail, especially he'd been in Capricorn under the weight of Saturn. So sense of freedom there. You're right. The nodes move in March. Jupiter goes in April. Saturn, May. And then Saturn does that dance back and forth, but he's dancing between Capricorn and Aquarius until he finally stays in Aquarius. So both Saturn and Jupiter will be strong. And, you know, I want to believe that Jupiter will give us vision, intuition, unity, harmony. Hopefully more people growing their spiritual practices, or at least growing kindness. You know, we think of Pisces as just such a beautiful, I always think of the fish swimming in the water, right? We're swimming in the ocean of our consciousness or unity. And hopefully Saturn brings in the constructs around that, like something that helps that endure. Hopefully you could see Saturn working to bring in Jupiter's vision. Having said that, you know, when we went through Jupiter's debilitation in Capricorn in 2008, and then Jupiter getting into Pisces, the economy picked back up, but we do see that the tendency is for the rich to get richer. I think we have to, not that we as individuals can do a lot about that, but I hope that this means we're going to be building communities and cultures based on Jupiterian values. And, you know, I think for the nodes moving, that's going to depend a lot on where that shows up in people's charts. But they're, of course, moving out of exaltation. So we'll see. I think Rahu and Aries could be quite hungry.
I am a little concerned about that myself. I'm certainly seeing that as major deconstruction of the ego identity. And we will all be going through an ego identity shift, and that will impact relationships and our world as a whole. You know, who are we now? Who are we becoming? What do we want to become? And hopefully that Jupiter piece will support something beautiful coming out of all of the challenge. But and Saturn, like you say, will give it some ground, some structure. I like your take, Laura. I'm gonna go with that.
I like your take. I like your heart. I like your moon. I love your hair.
Oh, I just love all of you. Just and you and you and you. We just get to love each other and be kind. And I think that is the medicine. And hopefully that Jupiter piece will remind us that we actually have more in common, more connecting us than disconnecting us, because certainly the world and systems of harm, these governments and authorities of harm want to make us think that we're completely against each other, but in fact, we're not.
Mhm.
We all have the same needs, the
Mhm.
same desires and hopes and dreams for ourselves and our lives. And I'm hoping that the Jupiter in Pisces will remind us of our harmony, actually.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Yeah, I agree with that. To remind us of our one humanity. Vasudev Kutumbakam. We belong to this one family. Let's take care of each other.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And if you know any Pisces in your life, they are very harmonious creatures, actually. And it's challenging sometimes. How are you so even keel? Because as a Scorpio moon, that's not always the feeling, but that part does give me hope. The Pisces, they're pretty even keel. They roll with things, they swim with things fluidly, and perhaps that's a taste of what we will experience in the year ahead with Jupiter. And as I've said to clients, if you're a wisdom worker and Jupiter is a prominent planet for you and your offerings in your dharmic path, then this will be a time to really rise and shine, to not hold back, to not hide. Get off the couch, stop eating chips, show yourself, and do good work in this world. Share your wisdom.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I had a conversation with a friend of mine because she went into a really positive Jupiter period. And about 6 months in, I said, you can't hide under a rug. I mean, Jupiter wants to be beneficial to you, but you got to also come out and receive. So rise and shine it is for Jupiterian or Piscean people.
Your dharma is not going to happen sitting on the couch eating chips.
No. Right.
Sometimes we need to sit on the couch and eat chips, but this will be the transit to get off the couch, dust yourself off, and share your gifts and wisdom, be seen and heard. And that's what our world needs now more than ever, is to show up and do good work in this world. And we all need to show up right now and do good work, those of us who have that orientation. So it gives me hope. It really does. And I'm going to stick with that. I'm the eternal optimist in many ways. And I want to believe that we're going to be able to turn the ship around and keep sailing in the right direction. So perhaps this is the transit that will support that.
Yeah. But I'm with you. We have to be able to see it in order to build it and become it and be it, right? So we have to see that vision and hold that vision for our world. That's the starting point. And I agree with you. I think it's offering a lot of hope. I think coming back to what Rachel said, 2022 offers hope.
Yeah. And I think being in community and being around people who feel good to the heart, like the both of you do, to myself and Angelica, is truly medicine. So I kind of want to end here on this high note with hope and just have you two both share, where can people connect with you? And I'm sure if they're listening, they are feeling the same way and feeling drawn toward you. So I'm excited for you to share this.
Go ahead, Laura. I want to hear what you're up to.
Well, my website is lauraplumb.com. I have an Ayurvedic integrative nutrition training coming up in January, and I am going to start moon gatherings in February of next year, and bringing in people like yourselves as well to talk about the different moons and the nakshatras. One other practice I think that is important, as Swati said, is to look at the nakshatras and see where you are. And then I think that you all should come join us on Instagram, because we're there, the four of us, and I feel like we have some good vibes going on there and a good little community. We're connecting there. And so, in a way, it's a kind of community in the sky.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
let's share there and keep that growing.
In the cloud.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, right now applications are open for my Dharma mentorship process, which is a year long, and we do amazing body-centered practices in this process to support strengthening your gifts and your wisdom and self-trust. And I would say that's the main place to really dig deep and dive into these gems that we're talking about today. And there's also a lighter version of that. I just created something called the Soul Circle. And this is where you'll get Jyotish support as well as body-centered resources. So we can put a link to that. It's on a private network now. We're shifting off of these social media platforms that just really aren't feeling so good. We're still on Instagram, still doing Facebook, but we're really focusing more on a private network now that is Dharma centered, Dharma focused, without all the distractions. So that's feeling really good.
Beautiful.
Hopefully we'll see some of you there.
Yes, and we'll have all the links in the show notes. And
Great.
again, I just have to reiterate that I've learned so much from the both of you, like not even just in this podcast, but just from following your work and the resources that you share. And we are so grateful because I do find it rare to find someone you can connect with to see as a teacher and a role model who inspires you, especially under the Vedic knowledge and the way the YouTube so beautifully describe it in your own unique ways, and the way that you express it in such divine feminine form. It just, it really, it's a feeling. It can't be put into words. So thank you for your time and your wisdom. It is so appreciated and so grateful for it all.
Thank you both. And I'll continue to be recommending you, Laura, to people who I always send people your way for Jyotish. You are the source that I trust. I don't trust anyone else these days, but I trust you. So I'll continue to send people your way. And I just love what Rachel and Angelica are sharing, all of these very practical Ayurvedic resources and tools that are so doable. I think you're really making it approachable for so many. And that fills me with a deep sense of gratitude and hope as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for
for
that.
having us.
Thank you, Swati. And I'd just like to add to that. I think it's so beautiful to see young people bringing in Ayurveda, bringing in Jyotish, because obviously, hopefully that'll save a lot of people time, right? If we can learn these things younger, we can get into our Dharma and to alignment at an earlier age and not make so many mistakes. But what's beautiful too is that we learn so much by our own direct experience, our own pratyaksha. And so you're helping others, right, to embody their life and embody their soul, embody their moon, embody their heart. And I think that's a really, really important thing that you guys are doing so beautifully. And Swati, thank you so much for leading the way in that. So thank you all.
And you as well, Laura. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Blessings to all of you. Take care.
Yes.